So again, the education program contains general information, as I shared. Again, it's not one size fits all, and one of the things we always suggest with the Alzheimer's Association when someone calls our helpline is if you're caring for a loved one, do you have legal and financial planning? Do you have an elder lawyer? Because every situation is so different. So really investing that time to speak to somebody who is educated about dementia, because there's different opportunities and different educational things that we should look at. As a result, we make no warranty. Again, I'm not a lawyer or a financial planner, but really just wanting to open up your eyes to think of what are some things we should start thinking about as we care for someone. Just wanted to mention all our curriculum. Again, the same thing I'm teaching you. Somebody who's in Florida is teaching the same curriculum, is teaching the same thing in Colorado. We are a national organization. Again, I'm part of the Connecticut chapter, but it's really nice to see the collaboration between the steering committee to put all this information together. Again, every state has different laws and requirements. So again, even if you move from one state to another, you might want to look at your paperwork and your documents and talk to an elder lawyer, again, if things have changed. So what will we learn this evening? So we're going to describe how caregiving affects finances. We're going to list the legal and financial documents that you should really put in place. Some of you may already have them in place. I have worked with many families that they're so involved with the caregiving, they're not thinking of the financial piece, and oh my goodness, that's something I probably should put in place. So we'll look at that. We'll prepare for useful discussions about financial decisions and planning, and begin to create a backup plan, right? So as a caregiver, if something were to happen to you, we don't often think about that, but what other things do I have in place? What are some backup plans that I have as I'm caring for my loved one? It could be a friend, a neighbor. I would love to ask, how many of you know that we have a 24-hour helpline? Sort of, okay. So again, just know, I think that's really important. I have information on the tables back there on all different topics, but 24 hours a day, you can call someone to ask any questions. It could be just information or referral, where is the nearest support group? Or it could be, I'm really having a hard day caring for my mom or my husband, I'd like to talk to someone. Again, we want to make sure that no one goes through this journey alone. And that's the message I want each and every one of you to know tonight. We are here through the journey and any questions that you may have along the way. Not only our helpline, but also we have our alz.org website. Is a very robust website. If you're interested in research, if you're interested in learning about other caregiver options or different trainings, the 10 warning signs, or understanding responding to dementia-related behaviors, all of the trainings that we do here, you can watch in your own home and watch the videos. I won't be here, I won't be in the library, but you'll be able to watch those same videos. Sometimes people have shared with me, I wish my sister could have joined me tonight. You can go home and watch the same video. They're all free on demand. So just wanted to share that with you. So just some terms, and we want to just review. So some of you may have heard the term caregiver or care partner, and it's a family member, friend, or legal guardian who supports someone with their health needs and well-being. We often refer to the care partner. Usually it's somebody in the earlier stage. So a spouse usually will consider themselves a care partner in the early stage of disease and caregiving later on. So you may have heard those terms interchangeably. It's someone who manages money or pays for expenses of another person. So it's not just physical caregiving. We say our ADLs, our activities of daily living, helping them with bathing or eating. But also a caregiver, sometimes I've worked with families where they don't realize, I am a caregiver. I am doing that. Might be helping a loved one, a family member with some finances or shopping. You're still a caregiver, right? So just wanted to review some of those terms. What are finances? So very simple, money and things that are worth money. Okay, so simple, just terminology. And financial literacy, understanding how to manage money, from handling day-to-day expenses and planning for the future. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how it relates a little bit differently when you're caring for somebody with dementia. What are some of the other challenges that we see that are different from another chronic illness or disease that someone may be experiencing? So the cost of caregiving. I often say a caregiver, especially with somebody who's caring for a loved one with dementia, it's emotionally, financially, and physically exhausting. Emotionally, right, we're experience loss, and it could be lost for many years. Physically, the caregiver is often not taking care of themselves because they're busy taking care of their loved one. And then financially, the care, give somebody the best care, can be financially exhausting and burdensome. So when we think about financial literacy, it's especially important for caregivers because it provides them with the knowledge and skills needed to better support themselves and others. So we want to be educated about finances, planning ahead. The key tonight, not only do you have the helpline, but also we want to think about planning ahead. We don't want to wait for a crisis. When we wait for a crisis, I always say we don't have as many choices. I could share an example I usually talk about is I was traveling from one town to another doing a presentation, and I have AAA for my car and all that, and I had a flat tire, so I thought, no big deal. Pulled over, I called, they're ready to come over. I didn't have a spare tire. What would have been 20 minutes ended up being about 3.5 hours because they had to purchase the tire, I had to get one. It wasn't quick, I didn't prepare. So this crisis was a lot harder because I wasn't prepared. So I think one of the messages this evening is being as prepared as we can, being knowledgeable, and having the conversation. So we're going to, every once in a while, check your knowledge. So what do you think, and I'd like to ask your thoughts on this, what percentage of caregivers have out-of-pocket costs as a result of caregiving? 95? Anyone want to take another guess? It's actually 78, but I think maybe we might have everything under, some in between there, yeah. So more than 3/4 of caregivers have out-of-pocket costs as a result of caregiving, including household and medical expenses. And often, when I speak with caregivers, it may be that they're also maybe not taking a promotion at work, or they're not working overtime, or they're decreasing their hours because they have to take care of a loved one. We have balanced that, right? So not only are we working less and making less money, the cost of care is increasing as the disease progresses. Right, so something to be aware of and to start thinking about. So as I mentioned, what is the impact on employment? So caregiving, just a raise of hands, how many of you, your employment has changed a little because you've been a caregiver, or you've seen that, experienced that, family or friends, right? Many caregivers end up reducing, as I said, reducing their hours, taking time off, retiring earlier, right? So their retirement funds are a little bit different, maybe quitting their jobs. I have some families that, I had a gentleman, he and his wife, he was in his 50s, and they retired early together. He was diagnosed, and they always wanted to go to Nantucket and have a place, and they had a weekend home that they would visit. So they did that 4 years earlier than they would have planned. But then that does affect financially, different years of retirement. This can increase debt, make it hard to save for retirement, or mean cutting back on other costs. So again, thinking about some adjustments that might have to be made. So throughout the program this evening, we'll also hear from some caregivers who are sharing their story.
Her care, doctor visits in some cases, clothing, to try to limit the spend down of her money. So I supplemented where I could, and then retired early, which impacted my income to continue to care for her, and then looking into getting a part-time job to supplement her memory care, facility care.
So let's also look at what's the impact on health for caregivers. As we saw the steering committee that put this presentation together, this is listening to different stories that we hear from caregivers. So caregiving can have a major impact on the caregiver's own health. And why is that? Often the caregiver may put off taking care of their own needs. Are they going to the doctor? They're so busy going to the doctor with their loved one that they're not making those appointments for themselves. And when caregivers don't take care of themselves, then what happens? It can lead to additional medical expenses because they didn't go early enough. Right? So again, just something to think about often. And sometimes the caregiver may pass before the person living with dementia. I don't know statistically, but we know that, caregiving is exhausted. So it is okay to ask for help. I think that's so important. Respite care is so important. I'm going to give homework with our packets tonight, but even some of you may have heard of something called the reverse giving list. Is where I always encourage individuals who are caring for a loved one to write down, what are some 5 things I need help with? And then on the other side of that list, put down, who are some people that have said to me, let me know if you need anything. Because in my experience, often I will hear people say, I want to help, but I'm not sure what to do. I don't want to impose. So maybe it could be somebody could make a meal for you, and you can put it in the freezer. Or maybe come over on a Saturday and just sit with your loved one so you can go shopping or go for a walk or take a shower, right? So think about those people that may say, let me know if I can do anything. And from my perspective, and Maria, maybe you could even share, sometimes people, they're not sure what to do. So when you give them a concrete example, like make a meal, oh my goodness, I'd love to make you baked ziti. That's easy, and they feel like they're helping. So again, don't be afraid to reach out. And I think as caregivers and friends, they want to be able to help you. So again, the impact on our health of being a caregiver. I know we're talking about finances a little bit tonight, but it's a package. We want to take care of ourselves and our health as well. It's not easy. Again, the Alzheimer's Association is here to be able to support you. So I just want to share a little information Again, how does Alzheimer's disease affect finances differently from maybe another chronic illness? And so what does that look like? What do you think for this checking your knowledge? Alzheimer's is a normal part of aging. I could tell you 18 years ago when I first started teaching this, there was a lot of discussion on, is this just normal aging? Because people expected someone as they age to become more confused and become more forgetful. And then we realized that it's very different from normal aging. We do know as we age, right, it does take us a little longer to learn new information. It takes us a little longer to read things. I know I find myself rereading something. It takes us a little longer to do things, but that's normal aging. We may forget a word here or there, but we remember it later. So it is not normal aging. This is the disease process. It is a fatal disease, and it is progressive. And so that's another thing that makes this different when we think about other diseases and finances. We know that the individual is going to need more and more care. The disease is progressive, okay? So more care is needed. So even though, you're handling everything right now, you want to think and plan ahead. What may I need in the future? Who may I call on? Or what are some services I may need? And you want to do your homework. Heather was sharing, going to college, her son just going to college. And when you go to college, right, you look at colleges and you explore and you make decisions. So again, who do you have on your list? Who's the care team? It is okay to realize we can't do this by ourselves. And who do we have around us to support us? What about this one? Alzheimer's only affects a person's memory. I can't tell you how many people just relate Alzheimer's and dementia to memory loss. I always say that would be very easy, right? We would just remind them and give sticky notes and make phone calls. But it affects our entire brain. So our cognition, our planning, our ability to do our finances. So that's very different. Is someone still able to pay their bills on time or correctly? Judgment can be impaired. So it's not just memory loss. It's our thinking, our reasoning, our executive function, and behaviors. Our brain controls all that we do, right? So personality and behaviors. Again, so what makes it different is their ability to manage money. Some people, one of the first signs is the ability to manage money. I had some individuals where it was the husband where couldn't figure out how to do the tip. And that was the wife's aha moment to say something is not okay. He always did the tip perfectly, but he really, it was that financial, it was challenging, he couldn't figure that out. Or I've had someone shared a story once with me that there was a woman who always deposited her Social Security in the bank. Every month she went to the bank, it was routine. And this one Saturday morning she came to the bank and said, oh no, I just want everything in cash. And the teller was very uneasy thinking this is not something she normally would do, and this is probably not safe walking out of the bank with all this cash. Her judgment was a little impaired. So sometimes the financial piece or the financial managing is where somebody has noticed one of the first warning signs. Does anyone want to share? I know you're shaking your head. Does anyone, feel free, as I'm sharing, if you have an example, the benefit and the beauty of being together is we can learn from each other and share. So if you have anything to share, feel free to do that as well. Messing up the checkbook by a couple of things here and there, but it's how do I fill out a check? Where do I sign? Like that's a cognitive ability. I could tell you, my kids can't either. My son, I could share, my son is 30, and I was so proud of him because he bought his own first house by himself, and he didn't even want me to go with him to the lawyer. I was like, are you sure? We'll go with you. He goes, no, Mom, I got everything. It's all taken care of. I'm set. And then he texts me, goes, I need a check? And I said, oh, because no one uses a check, right? So I think down the road we'll have some different signs earlier, but you're absolutely right. So sometimes filling out the check or paying a bill over and over or not paying a bill. So when we think about managing finances, managing money for someone with dementia, taking into consideration that the cognition and the ability to do our finances will most likely be affected. Again, just looking at Alzheimer's disease and the progression, it usually progresses in 3 different stages. We say early, middle, or late, or mild, moderate, severe, if you're talking clinically or medically. An individual with Alzheimer's usually lives, it could be 2 to 20 years. The average is about 4 to 8. Again, so very individual, right? So again, as I mentioned to you earlier, this is not one size fits all, right? Because even the length of the disease, the severity of the disease, how long someone's in the stage is different. And as the person advances through the disease, care needs increase and so does the cost. So again, it is progressive, and as it progresses, more and more care is needed, so that's going to significantly impact cost. Talking about Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, in the beginning, people may have trouble managing their money, as you shared, remembering to pay the bill. I could share a financial story, and I like to teach with examples of people that I've worked with. His father was always very frugal his whole life, and he called me and said, my dad just bought a car, and it was like $10,000 over the market price, and that's not like my dad. And that was his like aha moment. Something is not okay. Dad would never have done that. It was a financial aha moment. As the disease gets worse, they will no longer be able to communicate their wishes or make financial decisions. So that's another thing. Communication is affected with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias. Again, having that conversation of what are your wishes, what are your choices. We do want to try to do that as early as possible and have that conversation. So early planning, again, before it's a crisis or as early on, allows the person to participate in those decisions about their future care and about their financial wishes. I know that's not easy, and we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the conversation and maybe how to have that conversation for both the person with the disease, feeling that they have a part and a say, but also for the caregiver to realize I've done what they wish. So kind of looking at both people and how that can be important. I kind of mentioned this earlier. The income often goes down because the caregiver is no longer doing the overtime, didn't take that promotion, maybe retired earlier. Maybe they're in that sandwich generation and maybe their children are in college now and now there's not two incomes. So financially, but then we know as the caregiver is caring for the loved one and the disease progresses, more cost is needed because more care. And eventually the person will need 24-hour care. So again, we're going to hear from a caregiver.
So when we finally moved into assisted living, when we first got the cost, it was going to be $5,000 a month. When we started adding on daily medications and housekeeping and all the other things that come with it, we were quickly at $6,000 per month. In my mind, every month I was, doing the calculations of, all right, how much money does Dad have left? How long can this last? What happens when that goes away?
Presentation, right? So different costs of living, different costs of facility, different costs throughout different states. Again, this is a very generic presentation. So again, looking at the unique challenges of dementia caregivers. So again, everything that we show has been researched and studied by the steering committee, but we know dementia caregivers have twice the average out-of-pocket caregiving costs. So again, the person is often unsafe to be by themselves, where somebody with another disease may be safe and might need reminders or have their sugars checked and the nurse come in once a week. But someone with dementia, again, they need more care because of the memory loss. And did they take their medicine or didn't they? Right. What we know is 6 out of 10 individuals will wander with this disease. Someone could go out into their mailbox down their long driveway and make a right instead of left going back and not recognize a familiar location. So again, knowing that they need more care because of the memory loss, also because of executive function and planning and judgment. Right? I could share 2 different stories. It was a 90-degree day, very, very hot, and someone called our helpline. Her husband was walking up and down their road with a coat, boots, a hat, gloves, and scarf. It was 90 degrees out. She was so concerned, right? But his judgment, right? So things like that. So it's very different. The cost of care is, statistically, it says twice the average out-of-pocket cost. We know that 30 to 40% of dementia caregivers experience depression. Again, and so that's why it's really important. I hope all of you take the brochure, Taking Care of Yourself, because this is hard, right? And we're experiencing loss. My hope is that we continue to find the strength of the individual and focus on what they can still do. Yes, you have a question?
So, so you're doing this, you have depression, you have whatever you have. And then it's really hard to ask somebody, when you're trying to say, I want to go to the Y, and I want to go to chair yoga, or something benign, to say, can you sit there? Or can you make lasagna? Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to the Y. So that person, everybody's got something.
Yeah.
So then how do you ask?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I think, again, these are not, what I'm saying is not always easy, but I'm hopeful. And I think that as we continue to eliminate stigma, as we increase conversation to talk about this disease, I think there's going to be more understanding. And my hope is that people will understand what you're going through more because people are talking about it. I think support groups, I know Maria has a wonderful support group that you've done for years, Maria, so beneficial. Can you share a little bit about your support group maybe? Or just the importance of?
It's online. We used to meet in person, but after COVID was going on, of course we still wanted to meet, so it became online, and then we started getting folks from all over the tri-state area. And it's not it's not a therapy group as much as it is truly support. Because you cannot talk about some of these concerns with people who aren't dealing with it like you are. And it's so much more comfortable to be able to just unpack all your anxieties and all your issues. And for people to kind of validate what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And also often to give you some support. Many of our folks meet and have lunch. in
After they become friends.
the groups, and they become very close friends.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I think it's very valuable to be with others that understand. They always say, walking your footsteps. Again, everyone's journey is very different, but the commonality of loss and grief and stress and worry, they're similar, right? So, no judgment, they're confidential groups, so that might be something that could be helpful. But I think as we educate the community, and it's so nice the library has opened up their doors for us, as we educate the need, what do you need help with? What can I help you with if you're living with the disease? What do you need help with as you're caregiving? And I think as we start talking about this, having programs like this, people will understand. Again, not easy, but I truly believe in my experience, people want to help, but they're not sure what to do. If I go ask you if you want me to help you with your laundry, you're going to be insulted that I think your laundry's piling up. So I think they want to help and they're not sure. So sometimes just saying, I want to take care of myself so that I can take care of my loved one. And I think having that conversation, again, it's not easy. I hear what you're saying, but I think the support is so important. And to know, I could share another example. I had a woman in my group, good evening, welcome, in my group who shared, her husband was going to adult day just on Wednesdays, 1 day a week, half a day. And she said, you know what, but when I wake up on Monday morning, I know there's going to be a Wednesday. Like she just knew that she was going to have a certain amount of time. And that's all, that helped her. So again, everyone is very different, but to know it's okay to need that support and to go to the Y and to do yoga for yourself. We do know that, again, we see there's anxiety here, and women are more likely to experience the stress of caregiving. We know that statistically. We know 2/3 of women are diagnosed with this disease. It's more common in women, but then we do see the women more as the caregivers. So again, checking our knowledge, people younger than 65 can develop Alzheimer's. So under 65, we say younger onset. You may have heard that term, younger onset. It is not as common, but we do see that. The youngest in my group was 49, and several of the people in my group currently are in their 50s. Again, not as common. We do know that over 65, it doubles. Over 85, increases more. But we do know it is a disease, an older person. Age is the #1 risk factor, but we do see people under the age of 65.
I was going to say that there are other kinds of dementias that people can have.
Absolutely.
At a young age. And we know because of a celebrity, Bruce Willis is a great example of the frontotemporal type of dementia, which is not associated with age.
Yeah.
And people who are under 65 usually get that type of dementia. But
Yeah.
it affects the family the same way.
Right. Right. Thank you for sharing that. So again, younger onset, people living with younger onset. So again, I'm not sure if anyone here has someone younger onset, but what are some additional financial challenges that they see? And we're at the association trying to help them. Many report losing or quitting one or more jobs because of cognitive changes. I had a gentleman, he was, again, 56, and he kept getting demoted at work and getting demoted and demoted. Didn't realize dementia. They thought it was a work performance, right? So again, that took a little while to figure that out. They did eventually realize that, and he realized himself as well. So as a result, younger onset under 65, again, at the association, we're really trying, part of what we do is advocacy work, because there's more programs needed for people under 65, because there's so many programs that don't qualify unless they're 65 or older. So really, we need to take a look at that as a community. The LGBT community, what are some things that they face that are different? So we often know that may have to return to work, increase hours to get another job, make up loss of income. Many still have children at home, often live alone, having this disease and being by yourself, and what are those challenges? A person living with Alzheimer's will eventually need someone else to take over paying the bills because of several reasons that you mentioned, not even be able to write the check out or paying the bills over and over. Financial plans make sure non-related caregivers can access the person's money when the person needs help in managing it. So if you don't have a family member, who then is going to help you? So different challenges that they face. And then people with low income, less likely to be financially prepared. So we even know it's difficult if you are prepared and financially okay, but may have fewer opportunities to save for the future, struggle to pay bills, added caregiver stress, right? Less ability to pay for resources, and may qualify for services. Again, so one of the things I want to share with you is that area agencies on aging in Connecticut have wonderful programs. I always suggest families call, because you never know, there might be a veterans benefit or some specific grant that they have available There's a respite program. At the Alzheimer's Association, we have a $500 respite program. I know it's not a lot of money, but again, if it's that one day of coverage, and sometimes that respite fill a gap until another program is available. So again, the area agencies on aging, again, you can call our helpline, we'll give you those numbers, but always looking at what are some programs that can help financially, and sometimes there can be several together, and that can really help with that puzzle. So we're going to talk about what are the benefits of early planning, and I know I gave my example of the tire, but so who can benefit? I know we all are going to say everyone, right, from financial planning in the future. Everyone can benefit from putting financial plans in place, especially those who are living or caring for somebody. Again, I know we're exhausted, but really putting that financial planning in place is so, so important. So we're going to look at the caregiver and the person living with. So for the caregiver, what's the benefit of early planning? So knowing the person's wishes, feeling more confident making important decisions, knowing that you had that conversation and you were able to discuss, knowing how to handle financial issues and pay for care, and less chance of making costly or unwise decisions. So when you plan early, you'll have more choices. So we're going to listen to a caregiver here.
That really helped me because it gives me a sense of confidence that I'm doing the things that she really wants to be done. Allows me to not have to worry about decisions that I make because my mother has already laid out the plan. She's stated her wishes, and my role is really to execute those plans. I have found that making decisions for my own situation can often be difficult, and so even harder to make decisions, especially when it comes to medical decisions, financial decisions. To have that responsibility of making those decisions for someone else can be very, very difficult. So in that my mother was so prepared and had laid out financial plans and really had a structure around her life, that has really allowed me to be less anxious for the caregiving role.
One of the benefits.
And I want to hear from someone else as well.
One of the benefits of putting financial plans in place for caregivers is simply peace of mind. Oftentimes we have a lot of anxiety and fear about the unknown. How long is the disease going to last? What are the care needs going to be? When we think of all of those things that we might be apprehensive about, and we put plans in place for if this happens, here's how we'll handle it. And really think through, here's what's typical with the disease, here's what I need to be thinking about, and here's my plan for that. It can be such a gift to the whole family because people can settle in and focus on, here's what I need to focus on today, here's what I need to think about right now, without the weight of the what ifs hanging over there.
And again, benefits of early planning for the individual living with, ability to share exactly what they want and to make those decisions, reassure that others know their wishes and follow them, and having them decide who is something that I'm trusting, who are the people I want to have around this table to have a conversation. Just the relief to know I have my legal and financial plans in place as my disease progresses. So for them too, knowing that that's something that they have in place. So we'll hear from someone else as well.
One benefit of planning early for the person with the disease is that they get to have their say. They get to say, here is how I want things to play out. If there's ever a time when I can't live alone or when I need this kind of care, here's how I'd like that to happen. Here's who I want to be making decisions on my behalf if I can't make them for myself. So they get to have their say. In addition, they get to make choices about how they live their life, what they do now and in the months and years to come, with this additional knowledge of, hey, I've got this disease and here's what I can expect. And so a lot of people tell us that they choose differently, and they choose differently from each other. I talked to one person with Alzheimer's who said, you know what, I want every day to be regular. I want to work in my flower beds. I want to play with my grandkids. I want to have lunch with a friend. I just want lots of great regular days. I've talked to other folks with dementia diseases who said, I want to do the things I've been looking forward to. I want to take some big trips, or I want to do some really special things,
with the people I'm close to. So it's not the same for everybody, but the person with the disease gets to make choices and gets to live life more on their terms.
So conversations about finances are difficult, right? So we know that. I think we have to validate and recognize that these are not easy conversations as we share. Talking about money can make people feel anxious, uncomfortable, and it's hard to even know, how do I start this conversation? So we're gonna kind of work together here and think about, what do I need to think about for starting a discussion about finances? So again, writing down your goals and what your documents you already have, ones that you need to review. Again, sometimes writing down and planning, including trusted family members, close friends. Who should I talk with? Who should be around the table? You want to choose a calm time of day, if anybody has a calm time of day, I'm not sure. A quiet place. We want to encourage honesty, and we don't want to rush. We want to take our time. And it may not be one conversation. It may be several conversations. It may be parts of a conversation, and then that'll be continued. Right. So we know that these are not easy, but I think people who I've worked with and talked with, once they've had them, there's a certain weight lifted. So here's some additional tips. Again, know that it can be hard to ask for help managing finances, especially for someone, so even the person living with, for them, so they may not even have the insight that they need help. So that's a whole nother challenge. Some people with dementia have the ability to know that they're struggling, that they need help. Not everyone has that insight. Some are not, there could be denial about it, or the lack of insight, right? So that's another challenge that we're dealing with. We want to ask about the person's wishes, and don't judge the person for their decisions, right? If the person has difficulty communicating, you want to speak in short sentences. Pause to make sure that they understand what's being said. Again, when you're thinking about an elder lawyer, you want to ask, are you familiar with cases of people with dementia? Do they understand that process, that progression, to be able to understand competency and all of that? Very different than if somebody that may not be competent or have that difficulty with communication.
One thing that's important to appreciate is that if someone is too compromised in the disease, and then you go to the lawyer and you want to assign a power of attorney, the lawyer may not say this person is incompetent enough to sign for you to be the power of attorney. So you really do have to do this sooner. Then you have to go through other legal issues. So if you haven't done this and the person is in the mid-stage or deep into the disease, it's going to be very difficult.
It's harder, yeah. Yes?
Or you get the doctors.
Yes, then you have to get.
And that's pretty.
Thank you for sharing, yeah.
Advice I have for other caregivers, if the conversation about finances doesn't go well at first, is to keep trying. It took a while for my mom to come around, and I was exasperated. I would try to catch her at a good moment, and sometimes she'd give me a little tidbit here or there, so it might take time to just pull it all together. It's sort of trying to understand the moment if you're having a good time. What I did also was to bring up friends. My mother was very empathetic, so if I'd say, oh, remember so-and-so? They had a situation with their mom or dad or family member where something happened and the person didn't know what to do, or they didn't have understanding about it. So that was really hard on them. She'd say, oh, really? And I'd say, yeah, see, that would help me if, we talked about that kind of thing. And that would usually get her. So in my case, that empathy is what I would kind of try to use for her to open up more, but continuing to do it, catching on a good day, that was key, because it took time and it was piecemeal. Small victories, just get as much as you can over time and keep at it, because there usually will be a window where you can kind of break through, or in some cases it might be someone else has to talk.
You'll see here, I wonder if some of these resonate with you, some of the statements. I've always admired the way you handle your finances. I want to learn more about what works well for you. So that's a positive. Not easy, right? So this is why we have to have some thought here and some conversation, maybe some journaling. I've noticed you seem worried about finances these days. What worries you the most? Can I do to help you? I respect your privacy, but it would give me peace of mind. Sometimes that's worked with families that I worked with, that to say, I'm really stressed, I can't sleep at night because I'm worried, Mom, about you and the bills. Can I help you with that? And sometimes I've had families where they'll do them together, and kind of review them, and then mom will still sign, but they're doing them together in the beginning. Because sometimes there could be some paranoid behavior, not understanding why are you doing these. So sometimes doing them together can be a helpful tool as well. Starting a conversation about your own financial wishes. I want to talk with you about my finances so we can access them in case of emergency. I really want you to understand my wishes for the future, but let's talk about how I want my finances managed. So somebody with the disease may have that conversation. Not everyone, because not everyone has that insight, right? So you'll notice on the PowerPoint, there's a little orange box at the bottom that says activity. So what that does, it kind of points, we're not gonna do it tonight for lack of time, but it shows in your activity book that I gave you, this is just a nice journal for you to think about how to plan for that conversation. So that's in your books. It's the same thing that's right here. So again, helping you with tips for having that positive conversation. And it's not easy, but again, it needs some thoughtful reflection. They felt it was really important that we mention here avoiding financial abuse and fraud, because how is that with dementia? Well, somebody with dementia, we don't want them to be taken advantage of, right? So let's look at some things that we know about that. On average, how much money do Americans age 80 and older lose each year as a result of financial abuse and fraud? This is a national program, so studies show that financial exploitation, again, so taking advantage of someone, is the most common form of elder abuse, and yet only a small fraction of these incidences are reported. So they felt important that we discuss this when we're talking about managing finances. This is a topic that we need to cover. Financial abuse and dementia. So it can occur in any setting, right? Individuals living with dementia have a greater risk of becoming victims. Why is that, right? They can't manage their finances. They may not remember if somebody called and they felt uncomfortable or took something. Judgment is off, absolutely. Trusting, right? So they may not remember, right, or report the abuse, and they may struggle to make good financial decisions. So we're going to listen to one of our experts here.
People living with dementia are more susceptible perhaps to fraud and financial abuse than other people because they have a disease that's attacking their brain. And so their ability to solve problems, to think about things logically, to have insight may be impaired, and they may be able to be tricked by people they trust or people who seem nice or seem trustworthy in a way that they wouldn't have been at a...
So what are some things that we can think about to recognize signs a person may be having problems with money? So maybe you go to their home and there's unopened bills. They're just piling up. They never even opened them. And again, in all of these scenarios I have seen in my work, electricity or the gas gets shut off. Right? I had a cousin of mine who, again, when I visited her in Florida, the bills were piled up. Nothing was opened. I couldn't reach her by phone because her phone was shut off, right? Because she didn't pay the bill. So I had to, had to get help and had to do some wellness checks. Unusual large purchases. Again, that gentleman who shared, my dad just bought a car. It was $10,000 more than he should have paid. Multiple of the same item. And the example that they shared here is was a woman who kept ordering dog food. Her dog had passed years and years ago. So that just didn't make sense. She was ordering dog food and dog food. That was the aha moment for the family. They may repeat donations to telemarketers or answer everyone and say yes, because they're, like you mentioned, judgment. And again, missing money, hiding it. Where did I put it? Or maybe those unexplained bank withdrawals, like I mentioned earlier. So again, we want to share with you some tips to help lower the risk of that type of abuse. And again, some of you may be in different journeys right now that you've been past some of this. But my hope, too, for tonight is you can share the information and maybe the booklet with someone who is just starting out, right? So I think that's one of the benefits of really being together. Agree to a spending limit on credit. I think this is one of my favorite slides. Agree to a spending limit. I've had a family where, instead of a $50,000 credit card, reduced mom's to like $3,000, right? With mom agreeing, they talked about it. Create a separate account for recreational spending. Set up auto pay bills. Right? I think most people do those more today than in the past. Set up an automatic notification if there's a withdrawal that's just too large. You can get an alert almost from the bank. Request electronic bank and credit card statements electronically. Sign up for Do Not Call, and that's on there, the Do Not Call. I don't know if does anybody know if that works on a cell phone? Because I am starting to get calls on cell phones now. That was in the past. I think it may, I'm not sure. Anyone have any experience to know whether that works on cell phones? And ask credit card companies to stop sending balance transfer checks and things like that. So I think this is a wonderful kind of checklist to maybe help decrease that abuse and fraud.
One of the things that I did, my father was very proud. He really didn't want to admit that he had Alzheimer's. So I wanted him to be able to continue to feel good about himself. So I actually set up a checking savings account for him that was joint with me. Because again, I had power of attorney, so I could move things around a bit. I made sure that he always had $200 in that account. Everything else was protected, and he really didn't have access to it anymore. But he didn't know that because he still had that $200. A couple of years into his diagnosis, he actually had somebody stop at his home. He was outside working in his yard. They came by, a couple, old car, and pulled up to the driveway. They had a child with them, and said their child was ill. And they said they needed money for health care for this child. My father was always very generous as he became older and as he became more impaired with Alzheimer's. He became more generous. And so his inclination was to help this couple. They took him to the credit union. They asked him to withdraw all of his funds, so he did. He had access to that $200 that he knew about, and he gave it to them. They left him there in the parking lot, and he walked home. So it was really awful that that happened to him, but his money was protected because of the safeguards that we had put up. Everything else was still there, and I was able to replace that $200. So we tried very hard to do everything we could to protect him financially, but also to make sure that we didn't.
And it's a hard balance, but imagine if she hadn't done that. So again, in your books, so you'll see on the next page is that same list about avoiding financial abuse, and gives the checklist of things to do, and please feel free to share this with others that you meet. And so let's identify some financial and legal needs. So again, in your books, there's a section called Organizing Your Finances. So look at the income and spending, take inventory of assets, identify the cost of care, so kind of doing a checklist. And again, there's a little opportunity here to do that math. Make arrangements for ongoing financial responsibilities. So we're going to listen to two caregivers again.
One thing that I would suggest is when you have those monthly bills is to call. I had cable, and I said, hey, I can't pay this amount. When I'm looking at all the bills that we had, and they didn't want to lose me as a customer, so they reduced the cost of the cable. Also, the medical bills. Even though you get a demand for payment for a certain amount of money, call them. Go on the payment plan. Talk to the hospital about the payment plan. Talk to the different utilities. I was on a budget for heat. I was on a budget for electricity. Reach out and ask. And don't do all those calls at one day. Break it up and do one at a time so you don't get overwhelmed with it.
Keeping within a budget, the budget is really, really important for food, because it's very tempting to go into a grocery store and find all kinds of delicacies. So that's been a big change and a good one. We found that for the two of us, we were spending a lot of money on groceries. So taking a look at that is really helpful.
So again, there's a nice sheet in your packet about organizing finances and how to take a look at that. There's extras, so I would love you to take another one with you tonight too, because you may you're going to meet someone else in your life that maybe is in the beginning of this journey and didn't know about that information, that they could help them with the planning and thinking ahead. Again, if we look into the common funding sources, right? So a number of financial resources that may help to cover the cost of care. So you want to look at your personal resources, your income, 401k, savings, stocks, bonds, all of those things. But then there's also some federally funded resources. Again, my suggestion is called the Area Agencies on Aging, because there's all different funding that you may qualify for. Again, there's a new guide model that there's some health systems in Connecticut that are doing that can help for respite care. We have our respite program. So reach out. It may be piecemeal and putting things together, but could really make a difference. Again, then looking at those state-funded programs. Look at income and spending, review and update documents, really important.
Most of these resources you can access online. You can access from multiple different entities. And I did most of all of her documents that were necessary. The power of attorney, the living will, the healthcare power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, all of those things you can access, and you can get them notarized and legal documents created. So don't let that be a hindrance to take care of those items, because those items are really, really important early on in the disease. If you wait, it's only going to cause more problems. So the earlier you get it, the better. And Don't be afraid of the nuances of all these documents and all these papers. It's pretty simplified if you research it. There's a really simple.
Move ahead to Ken. We have the document in your folders for organizing those legal plans and documents right there. Again, what's really nice, and I know you can see it in your packets here, but really paying attention to, the documents. So the durable power of attorney, durable power of healthcare, living will, living trust, and standard will. So those are the basics, right? But it has, do you need this or do you already have it done? Checklist. Is it in place? Where is it? Do you have it in place? And the date it was last updated. And again, some people, if there's it's a major change, they move from state, there's some different properties, you may want to, make sure, does it need updating? That may be a call to your financial planner, your lawyer, to say, do I need to update this? I moved, we sold some properties. Really important to make sure that they're current documents as well. This is a list, resources to make sure that as you need legal and financial guidance, this is a wonderful, if you want to take a picture or jot any of these numbers down. Again, the Alzheimer's Association, our helpline number you can call. It's not, no, that's not in the, again, our helpline can also help you, but I think this is one of my, for next time, so this is one of the, I thought that was in here, so I will probably make a copy of the slide next time I do this presentation, because I think this is really valuable. Again, know that you can call our helpline and we can help direct you. We have what we call an Alzheimer's Community Resource Finder that has a list of elder lawyers, a list of the area agencies on aging, so different things, different programs that you may need. So again, if you have any questions, you can call our helpline and we can direct you to some of these. I know this is another hard one because we're so busy currently caregiving and currently doing what we're doing, but we want to think about creating a backup plan, and what does that mean? We need to talk with friends and families about who can take over different caregiver responsibilities, right? Who can help us? Consider assigning responsibilities to more than one person. Designate a trusted backup agent for the person's power of attorney. Something happens to you and you're the caregiver, right? What you have in place there. Keep an up-to-date list of medical information for the person, their medications. If somebody is living home with you, a current picture. Again, we know 6 out of 10 will wander. The Alzheimer's Association, for the last year and a half, we partnered with the state police on a program called Bring Me Back Home. So I encourage you to call your local police, register them. It's a government link. We helped design the profile, but a picture, their medications. Where did they used to work? Where did they used to go? So if they were to wander, it helps the police already have this information, because you're going to be upset, right? So you want this to be already in the system. You're not going to remember what they wore, right, or what they look like. So really just providing that information. 2 examples I want to share with you. I had a nurse. She had retired 15 years ago. And this one morning she woke up and showed up on the hospital on the 3rd floor ready to work, right? So knowing where she worked, that was one of the first places her family looked. Another gentleman I remember several years ago was wandering, and they found him. He was sitting outside the gas station where he had worked for 30 years, waiting for it to open. So again, how we can help expedite some of those searches. So again, not only, it just reminded me of this as we look at keeping up-to-date lists, medications, contact doctors, but also that Bring Me Back Home first responder program, I think is really important. Taking care of your own health as a caregiver, the best thing you could do for the person. This is the best thing you can do for the person. So think about that, is to take care of yourself. If you have not visited the doctor lately, please do that. Trying to eat well, exercise, breathe, take time for yourself, take time for your yoga class. Look into respite care. There's respite care available through the state, through our helpline as well. Ask others for help if that is okay. It does not mean you're not the still #1 best caregiver if you ask for help, and you need to help build that care team. So again, here is the Alzheimer's Association information, our 24-hour helpline, our online program, and that alz.org is our community resource finder. I also left lots of information about the disease, communication strategies, taking care of yourself, understanding behaviors, all information on the table. Take as many brochures as you like. My hope is that there's 10 people here. You'll share this with one other person, and now 20 other people know about our services. So thank you for your time and your attention this evening. Know that you're not alone, and we're here to help you throughout this journey.